worshipping the sun, worshipping the moon, worshipping the water, mummification, cannibalism. Hi, I'm Mary-Ann Ochota. I'm an anthropologist and archaeologist. I specialise in... do I specialise in anything? I don't know what the second half of that sentence was. I'm not sure. The thing that I specialised in my writing is writing about British archaeology, particularly British prehistory, because I think it is amazing. It is so strange, so varied, so not really what the world expects. Because when they think about British archaeology, they think of the Romans probably. Bit of, castles, the crown, palaces and historic properties. What they tend not to think about is all the weird and wonderful stuff that you find in prehistory. The stuff where it wasn't Britain back then, of course, but on this land that we find ourselves in right now, there were people worshipping the sun, worshipping the moon, worshipping the water. There were people practicing shamanic acts. There were people practicing cannibalism. There were people practicing mummification. And we have sites and artifacts that can take us back to those places, take us back to perhaps starting to explore some of those themes, perhaps some of those connections that we might have now. But modern archaeological science has answered many questions for us. It's fantastic with terms of things like radiocarbon dating, with isotope analysis, which means that you can determine where someone grew up or what they were eating because you've analysed the particular version of the chemical in their teeth or bones. But when you look at these complicated, slightly strange, often multi-period, so used for a long period of time by different people bringing their own interpretations, their own modifications to these sites, what you're often left with, despite the leaps and bounds of archaeological science, is a kind of, what were they thinking? Why did they do that? How does this all make sense? Because it's internally incoherent or it's utterly baffling. And Secret Britain is basically about 75 sites and artifacts that for me made me go, what? And I thought, if that's the criteria, basically. If I go, what? Then it goes in the book. I've got on my computer a volume 2 of other sites and artifacts that made me go, what? But didn't make it into the first one. So the first one that I want to start with, because this is a whistle stop, I had to pick a few, because otherwise we would be here till midnight and they'd be booting us out. Or we'd be bedding down, either way. This is Anglesey. It's a site called Brinkethley Thee, which, forgive my pronunciation, it's the mound in the dark grove. Nowadays, it's the mound in a farmer's field. Often you share it with sheep. Often you share it with other people coming to explore weird and wonderful bits of British prehistory. But other than that, there's very little interpretation. There's no souvenir programme. There's no guidebook. It's just you walking through the field, mind the sheep shit, and, ooh, it's bad language. And then here you come to what is actually the back of a beautiful mound. The mound and the stones around it were first constructed around 3000 BC. So that makes it about 500 years earlier than the stones, the big trilithon stones being erected at Stonehenge. This is the Neolithic, the late Stone Age. So people are farming. They have pottery, but they don't have metal. So they're using flint tools, and then all the kind of organic materials, timber and leather and hide and plant-based textiles, bone, all that stuff as well. The weird thing about this place is it's got multiple meanings and it's very, very unique. At first sight, it's a chambered tomb, so a burial site. It's got an entranceway, which is actually on the other side to the angle that we're looking at from there. And a kind of a narrow passageway, you can go in. And then when you kind of enter into the kind of central chamber, hence chambered tomb, that is where there would have been human remains placed by farming people from this area, probably. I say probably because people might have come from a wider area to bring some of their dead. Not everybody in a community would have ended up in a chambered tomb like this. There's another one quite close by, which is quite close by, not really, about as far away as Anglesey, in Wiltshire, West Kennet Longbarrow. Some of you may have heard of that or gone to visit. Again, not much signage. You've got to park up on the lay-by next to the A road, climb up the hill, dodge the cattle, and then you get to commune with the ancestors. Going into this portal, you kind of have to duck down. There's a kind of a physical experience of the tomb, which I think is really magical. There are no longer any human remains in there. They've been taken away. Actually, in the case of this one, they were taken away quite early on. Those antiquarians wanted to do a bit of investigating, so they took them all away. It was probably used for about 50 to 60, maybe up to 100 years. So not that long, given the amount of person hours using probably antler picks to dig the earth and make a mound, and to construct this central chamber with big stones. The thing about Bryn Celli Ddu, though, is that it's got more details to it, which make it fit the criteria of what? The first thing is this standing stone with this really intricate but slightly crazy pattern incised into the stone. This is actually a replica. The real one is in the National Museum because the rain in Wales will eventually wash away the pattern, and it was decided that we should probably keep the pattern, and also a pattern that we can see. So it's a replica, but it's a perfect replica. No one knows what this is. We've got one other site near to Bryn Celli Ddu on Anglesey Island itself, which is in, for those of you who don't know, the top northwest corner of Wales, just a little distance from the mainland. We've got two examples of these patterned stones, both nearby. One here, Bryn Celli Ddu, and one just up the road, a place called Barclay-o-Dad i Gawres. The only other places we see these in Britain and Ireland, or the most of the places we see, are in Ireland. So the thinking is, first of all, maybe these were Irish settlers. Again, they didn't think of themselves as Irish, but forgive me, shorthand. The people who were living on the island of Ireland came over in a boat and perhaps had a sort of an outpost. Maybe they were setting up a settlement here, found some space, a few people died, the community lived for a while, or maybe there were traders and people working with people in Ireland. They went, the guys over the water do this really cool thing with stones. They do all sorts of interesting patterns. We should try that. And someone said, yeah, all right. But we've only got two examples, so obviously didn't catch on. No one knows what this is. People have said, oh, is it a star map? It doesn't really look like it. Is it some kind of celestial journey? Could be. At this point, your guess is as good as any experts, because you can go to Anglesey and stare at the stone and go, I think it's a bah. Fill in the gap. It's up to you, because we don't know what it is. It's not a physical representation of something in the world. It's not a kind of map of how to get to Donald's house. So we don't know what it is. The other weird thing about this is that it was never designed to be standing up. It was a decision made because after the mound was excavated, this was found lying down. It was lying face down with the pattern facing the ground. And then the first version of this mound was much greater, and it would have covered the pattern stone face down completely. So the first people to, after the first phase of construction, would perhaps never, they would certainly have never have seen it. They might have known it was there, but they didn't, you wouldn't have known unless you knew, as it were. So what does it mean? Did they ritually kill the stone? Was it brought from somewhere else and then buried? Was it always intended to be buried? Maybe it was laid flat facing down because it was some kind of offering to some kind of, I'm going to call them spirits of the earth. Maybe that was a gift to them. Because if you go inside, this is where you can walk in. It's all about light and darkness and going underground. So a burial chamber is always that experience where you feel like you're then in the earth, because there's a mound of earth above you. A Neolithic burial chamber, not all of them. This is a really odd pillar of stone. Again, completely unique in Britain and Ireland. This passage into the tomb is perfectly aligned for midsummer sunrise, which again is something that's very familiar in tombs in Ireland, like somewhere like Newgrange. There's one day in the year, coming up, 21st of June, you could go and visit. You won't be alone that morning, I'll tell you that for sure. There'll be a bunch of other people. A stream of light, a beam of light, because of the rising sun, penetrates the tomb and shines onto the back wall. If you imagine the back wall here, on the other side of the back wall is that pattern stone that would have been in the earth. So it would have shone towards the pattern stone. Is that significant? I don't know. That's my voice. That's my noise. This weird, smoothed pillar, very rare, very odd, never ever gets lit by the sun. It's just out into the corner, so it's always in the darkness. It's always in the shadow. Even on a day that isn't midsummer, the light doesn't reach it. That's a flash. It's flash photography. Is it phallic? Is it sort of a wood kind of thing, perhaps denoting something of the living? Is it a guardian, a kind of human figure, or a kind of sort of human, sort of spiritual representation? We don't know. Once again, once you've worked out the pattern stone, head on inside and work out the pillar stone, because your guess, once again, is as good as the experts.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.